within, and that's more dangerous than the enemy without.
You know,
implying that there are adversaries here in America that pose a real risk.
Lincoln said the same thing, maybe more articulately, but Abraham Lincoln said...
Well, that was amid the Civil War.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but no, he talked about it's not going to be, say, militarily an exterior, an outside force coming in and brutalizing and defeating America. No, it will be via division from within our country. That would be the thing that eroded our foundation and could destroy a country.
Would you agree?
That's what he meant.
Would you agree that he'll probably be liberated to a degree if he wins again, coming into office, as in the sense that, you know, the first time it was new, there were lots of people telling him he couldn't do things. In some instances, he did decide he couldn't do the things that people, not everything, some things he did do. He's come back. America has said, all right, we want you back.
Right.
I'm just assuming, is that a reasonable assumption that he'll probably feel liberated?
And he can't seek a second term, another
right.
term, a third term.
That's a good point. And yes, I do. I think it will be more liberating, but in a good way for him to, I think his first go around, I think he was talked into doing some things that he regrets now, including hiring a lot of people that did not work out for him because, and I've been in the same situation as an administrator, where people are talking you into, oh, you got to hire that bureaucrat. They know where the light switches are, and you're a newbie. You don't know. You get talked into hiring somebody, and it's like, man, they're sabotaging you. You find out at the end you can't win them over. I think Trump went through that, and he's not going to make that mistake again.
So who does he hire? Who does he hire? How does he hire them?
With age comes wisdom, and through more years of experience, you do become more discerning on who people are, who will be loyal to you, not as a person and not like obsessively, but who's loyal to the agenda, his agenda for America.
I mean, that's a real concern for many Americans about a second Trump term, is that he's surrounding himself by loyalists and sycophants.
I don't believe that he is, though. He has a pretty small circle right now. I mean, and he's got some gatekeepers that, I don't know. I don't know if sometimes they look out for his best interest, to tell you the truth. But no, I think that he has become more discerning. You know, when I think a lot of discernment really kicked in for him was the assassination attempt. And he talks about that, about how that was literally life-changing for him, where he stepped back a little bit, took a deep breath, and I think was able to grasp an even bigger picture for moving forward and how people's lives are at stake. And I mean, a situation like that you would face, it would change your life. And I think that is going to aid him in being a more empathetic, perhaps, president.
I think people back home in the UK and perhaps watching across Europe worry about a Trump term, some of them. Think he's unpredictable, don't really know what he's going to do. What would you say to people watching at home, waking up this morning and it looks like it is President Trump? What would you say to reassure them that the world's going to still be going in a good direction? I think inherently people all over the world, they want world peace. And it sounds cliche and it sounds naive to wish for that. But I think people, they desire, they crave, they want world peace. Trump has come out very adamantly against war, understanding that war is a business for so many in America anyway, and we're perpetuating these skirmishes and these battles that America, we should have no part of because we don't have a specific interest in some of these parts of the world where we're dumping a lot of money that America doesn't have. You know, we're $30-some trillion in debt, and it's irresponsible for us to keep funding wars and battles that we shouldn't be in and costing lives, treasure, and blood. It doesn't make any sense. So people around the world, I think, who recognize that, hopefully they understand, they can be relieved that he gets it and he doesn't want to be a part of that anymore, that military industry that has really made war a business.
I just want to ask, Sarah, you come from one of the most pristine states in America, frankly, in the world, Alaska, but it's also one of the sort of drilling capitals of the world. I mean, what would you say, to take up Tom's point, what would you say to those young people in Britain who are desperately worried? What about many Britons of all ages, desperately worried about climate change and the Trump agenda?
And Alaska is so pristine and it is so clean, and in perpetuity, I want to see that continued. True conservationists like me, we want maximum sustained yield of our resources. We want it, like I say, in perpetuity for the next generation and the next generation to be able to enjoy and benefit and responsibly, ethically develop natural resources, so that future generations can also be blessed by what we have been blessed with. Trump gets that way. He does say succinctly, drill, baby, drill. I invented that. That's my baby. You know, I talked about that in rallies 15, 16 years ago about the need to responsibly and ethically develop our resources, so we're not going hat in hand to other countries asking them to develop resources for us when we're rich in them and they don't have the worker safety standards. They don't have the environmental standards. We do. Because, again, true conservationists who also understand the need for natural resource development to allow us to be energy independent, meaning we can be secure and sovereign with that link between energy and security. We do it right. And I am very confident that President Trump believes in that.
Can I, given you're a very articulate advocate for him, would you take a job in his administration?
I would be very interested in doing something with energy independence. It's so important to understand, and it probably sounds cliche because I repeat it all the time, but the inherent link between energy and security and energy and prosperity. The cost of energy touches absolutely everything that we touch, everything around us, plastics, material, transportation, energy, petroleum products that's the backbone of all these things. So when we are reliant on foreign countries, even some countries that look at us as an enemy, and we ask them to produce for us, it makes no sense and it makes the world less safe, less secure.
OK, watch this space. Thank you very much indeed. We're just going to go to Dan, but just before we do, Jessica, I just want to ask you, because you've got some news about the Senate. Basically, the Senate is lost for the Democrats,
the
is that right?
Associated Press has also made the official call. Republicans have taken back the Senate. As I mentioned before, they have flipped that Ohio seat. This is before we even know what's going to happen in Montana, though John Tester, we expected him to lose. He is trailing there. We talked about some earlier about that Nebraska Senate seat where an independent was challenging Deb Fischer. They have called that for Deb Fischer, though it was very close. And then right now, I truly believe that as these blue wall states go in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, there's a good chance that those Senate races could all fall the same way for Republicans. You know, my projection was that Republicans were going to pick up between 2 and 5 seats. That actually might be as many as 6 right now. And of course, the one difference where we are seeing that, you know, in 2016, every single Senate race went the same way as the presidential result. In 2020, only Susan Collins managed to win. So we could see that sort of almost be the same, but if Arizona is the difference there, where it looks like Trump is going to win that state. The Democrat Ruben Gallego still on pace to win that seat, and that really has to do more with candidate quality. That Carrie Lake was very much an underperforming candidate, who came into that race very unpopular from her gubernatorial race. Okay, let's go to Dan at the Trump party. Dan, I'm imagining that the mood is improving by the minute, probably there.
Yeah, look, I just talked to one source who was in a VIP party nearby with the campaign, and I said, have they started uncorking the champagne yet? And he said they've been drinking champagne all evening. So there you go. They've been pretty bullish since the beginning, but obviously they're growing much more confident. The other thing to tell you is that we're being told, now this hasn't been confirmed, but you know, to expect possibly Donald Trump to come sooner rather than later. And when I asked, you know, well, what kind of time frame we're talking, maybe in the next half an hour or so, I think the kind of thought was that he wanted to get up on stage before Kamala Harris spoke in Washington, D.C. Obviously, you know, we don't have a definitive result or anywhere close yet, but I think, you know, there's a lot of buzz in the room here. People want to see him. I'm sure he'll want to talk to the thousands of people gathered here, so we'll keep you posted if there's any sign of him being on the move. Mar-a-Lago is about 3 miles down the road to the south of here, so it's not far with a Secret Service motorcade. Probably take you 5 minutes to get here, so we'll keep you posted if we hear anything further on his arrival on stage here in West Palm Beach.
Okay, it's Robert here in the studio. I was wondering whether the atmosphere there shows any sense of kind of humility, or are people sort of doubling down on this idea that there's an enemy within? I mean, are you detecting any sort of grace in terms of a speech that would, would declare victory?
Not at the moment. I think they're all still digesting the results, really. I mean, they are being quite kind of optimistic about a clean sweep of the House, the Senate and the White House. I think they're just beginning to digest what that means in terms of what they feel they'll be able to do. But, at the moment, every time Kamala Harris' photo appears on the screen behind me, there's a boo when she comes up, and a huge cheer whenever they see a projection that suggests Donald Trump is ahead. We've had a sort of video played in at one point of Donald Trump dancing to YMCA. That got a pretty big reaction as well. CNN are broadcasting here. They are also, interestingly, being shown up on the screen behind me, more than Fox News, actually. So when they crossed to CNN's correspondent here, there was a lot of sort of both booing and cheering, but a lot of noise generally. So I think people are still sort of digesting it. They don't want to get ahead of themselves, but I think they are feeling increasingly confident as this goes forward, that it is looking very hopeful at the moment for Donald Trump.
Dan, thank you very much indeed. Quite why YMCA became the theme tune of the Trump era is a subject perhaps for a different programme, which we will address at a very different time. Now, if you are just got up, you're making breakfast for the kids or whatever, and you're wondering what the heck has happened overnight, has Trump become the president? No, Trump has not become the president yet. But things are quite honestly looking, with the usual caveats, like they're trending in that direction. Why? Well, North Carolina has been called for Trump. Georgia has all but been called for Trump. It looks like he may be doing pretty well in Arizona as well. That leaves Harris only one path through the northern swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. It is still conceivable that she will win there. It is still conceivable, therefore. I see Jessica is catching my eye. Maybe it's not conceivable, or are you...
No, I was just going to say that the New York Times, they now say it's a 90% chance of a Trump victory, and that they estimate that Trump will win the popular vote by 1.1 points. They say that, again, 74% that Wisconsin will go, 76% that Pennsylvania will be for Trump. I mean, I also just want to stress that it's been 20 years since a Republican won the popular vote as well. George W. Bush in 2004 was the last time. So, I mean, we are seeing states, and Trump was questioned of some of the places he was going to, like Virginia or New Jersey and different things. But we're seeing the closer numbers in New Jersey. Virginia looks like it's going to be half of the margin that it was in 2020. Robert already mentioned that Minnesota was much closer. So it's not just these swing states where we're seeing closer numbers. It's in many of these other states where we're in, and even in North Carolina. I mean, I do think this was a repudiation of the Biden-Harris administration, because actually we talked about that governor's race there that was a little bit different, but it looks like Democrats have won the attorney general's race there in North Carolina. There was a Secretary of Public Instruction race that was very heated for basically the state education secretary there. That also looks like it's going to go for Democrats. I mean, I think at this point, sort of Democrats' last hope is the House, and I still think we see it still as a toss-up here at the Cook Political Report, and we might not know for some time, and that's because the battle for the House actually doesn't run neatly through the presidential battlegrounds. It runs through places like New York and California. So if we do see better results there for Democrats do still, I think, have a fighting chance in the House. That's sort of their last stop to stop a Republican trifecta.
It's a pretty remarkable fact if they're winning the popular vote by this margin. Not only, as Jessica says, they haven't done that Republicans haven't done that for 20 years. But there was kind of an assumption, maybe a lazy assumption, that actually kind of Democrats were always destined to win the popular vote. That was their grievance against the Electoral College, simply because of sort of shifting demographics, a more liberal population. But actually, Donald Trump looks like he's winning.
OK, I think in a minute we need to think about exactly picking up on that point about why the Biden administration, why people turned against it precisely in the numbers that they look like they have. But first, I just want to go to Rachel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Rachel, I don't know how much of that you listen to, but, generally what we have concluded at this point of the night is that it's really hard to see Harris making it, but she potentially still could if she racks up the numbers in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. How do you think it's looking there?
Well, here in Pennsylvania, there's certainly been a bit of a change in the language we're hearing from the Democrats. I've just got off the phone to the Democrat mayor of this city, Pittsburgh, one of the two biggest population centers along with Pennsylvania. Now, there's no doubt that Harris has taken Allegheny County, that's where we are here, and has done so by quite some way. But at his watch party, which was wrapping up slightly early, I think, possibly indicative of how they're feeling. This was the man that just last night was at the Kamala Harris event here and talking about her historic path to the White House, now saying, well, I'm still hopeful that she can take the state. Look, 83% of the vote is in now. And what we are hearing from Kamala Harris's spokesperson when it comes to this state is that still a lot of votes from Philadelphia, the other big population centre, still haven't been counted. And what she is saying is that, look, there are areas that are non-white, that are heavily student, that we're still waiting to hear from, where we know that turnout was very high. Now, I'd caveat that with the fact that we've been travelling through these rust belts, and actually stereotypes have never really seemed to hold. It's become impossible to predict when you go up and talk to someone and ask them how they're voting, which way they're going to go. And actually, a lot of the non-white population we spoke to in places like Detroit, where there's a very big Arab American community, were saying to us, well, we can't vote for Kamala Harris because we're so furious about the Democrats' stance on Gaza. And when you pointed out to them that former President Trump has a history of racist views, they would simply say, well, there was peace under him 4 years ago. So I'm not quite sure how much they can rely on that vote, both in places like Philadelphia, but also in places like Detroit, which was the other place they were saying that they were still waiting for a large number of votes to come in on. Look, if you have a look at the numbers in the remaining parts of this state of Pennsylvania, to win this really pivotal state with its 19 electoral college votes, Harris would need to be 18 points ahead. Now, she's much more than that here in Allegheny County, in Pittsburgh. You may say that Philadelphia is similar, so that's why they've not given up hope entirely. One of the local Democrat data crunchers here, campaigned for her for years, has said that, look, he still thinks that there is a path, there is hope. He'd have liked for her to have been an awful lot more ahead even here. So they're not conceding it. They are still fighting on, waiting for these votes to come in. But I think, given what we've seen over the past week and a half, in these Rust Belt states, places where in the past, big metropolises like this, where the vote for the Democrats was very strong, we've seen that starting to slip as people who you might expect to back Harris have really been questioning whether, given the state of the economy, given particularly what's happened in the Middle East, whether those things have been more important to them than perhaps reproductive rights. Look, there is still time to go here. There is no call for this state, but at the moment it is looking very difficult indeed. And one thing that has been surprising is how quickly they've managed to count the votes here. We know, don't we, that last time in Pennsylvania it took them 4 days. They put huge investment into trying to speed that up. They bought 2 really modern vote counting machines here in Pittsburgh. That really seems to have paid off. So it looks like the votes are being processed, are being counted much quicker. They did that, of course, because they didn't want there to be this delay that last time former President Trump used to try and sow doubt about the outcome of the vote. The reality is, although it's still on a knife edge, this time he may not need to do that here.
OK, Rachel, thank you very much. Jessica.
So our control room is telling me that our team in Georgia, Secretary of State's office has told CNN that they should call Georgia for Trump, and the final vote margin will be around 100,000 votes. So again, another one that we expect to be very soon into Trump's column. I mean, again, this is looking like the 2016 map all over again. When we still don't have the data in the last state that was that the polls closed in is Nevada. That is the state that we could see actually flip to Trump, actually, because in 2016 and in 2020, it did go for Democrats. And so that would actually mean that Trump could actually have a larger margin at the Electoral College than he had in 2016.
And the other difference with 2016 is he looks like this time he's going to win the popular vote. New York Times now reporting there's a, by their modelling, there's a 93% chance he wins the presidency, and in Pennsylvania, nearly an 80% chance he wins that crucial battleground state where so many people said that was the whole ball game.
Jessica, we keep caveating the idea of a Trump win, rightly so, obviously, because he hasn't won yet and we're not there yet. But do you think you've looked at this data over many years? This is your area of expertise. Is there anything you're seeing that makes the Democrats' path to a victory look really credible, or is it a pretty long shot at this point?
I mean, it's looking very hard here. I think that, especially, I go back to I think that's sort of the canary in the coal mine, those numbers sort of in Michigan, that Dearborn area. Yeah. And that protest vote that we saw still may not be enough to have swung the state, but I think it just sort of tells us that there is a deep unrest with the Biden administration, not just with voters across the board, but with those younger voters, that we've seen newer voters coming in, that Harris was not winning younger voters, younger male voters by what she needed to be, and that clearly we did see, that uncommitted vote that we saw in states for there, and I think there is a question of should Biden have stepped aside earlier, but I think that you're still, whoever the incumbent party is penalized. I keep going back to that just number, that in 4 years, 10% more of America thinks that the country is on the wrong track, 70% wrong track.
Sarah, why precisely do you think that was? Which bit of the Biden administration and its work do you think people have reacted most strongly against, if they have?
I think there has been a perceived aura, anyway, of arrogance in the administration, where administrators felt that they knew best and they wanted to tell a city, an individual what was best for them. They make a mistake in underestimating the wisdom of the people. We're a proud, independent individual, collectively working to make this country better. And we don't need faceless, far off in a bubble bureaucrats and politicians telling us what's best for us. I think a lot of that American independence, that has really risen in this election cycle. The beauty of certainly the tradition of our style of governance in the U.S. is that pendulum does swing, right? It goes left, it goes right, as she was suggesting also. And quite often, we're watching what goes on with elected officials and say, wait a minute, you're not governing as you campaigned. It was easy to campaign, all these promises, all these things you're going to do to allow more freedoms for the people to make our own decisions and equal opportunity, all this, but you're not governing that way. So we're going to go back and try, again, the other side of the political aisle. And then pretty soon it's like, the grass is probably greener on the other side. Then we go back again. That's the way it's been in America. And in a good way, that's a healthy way. That provides balance. Just like our three branches of government, it's checks and balances. Our forefathers, they were brilliant in how they set this all up. It does allow balance, and that it should be ethical. It should be safe in terms of people being able to, hold on to and live out their dreams as Americans. Our political process is really good.
We had Meghan McCain in here earlier, John McCain's daughter. You obviously were John's running mate. We were discussing that American politics seem very different in his era than it does now. It's more polarized, it's more divisive. What do you think he would make of tonight?
I think he would kind of go along the lines of the question that you asked about, is there going to be some humility and is there going to be some grace and all that? Because he was of that makeup within himself. I just dearly loved him and have the utmost respect for him. And I think that he would provide some of that wisdom or that direction to the populace and to people who are being elected, to remind them that, we're all in this together. We're all a team, and some humbleness and some grace can go a long way in acceptance.
And yet Donald Trump was the man who called your running mate, somebody who was a loser.
I didn't like that.
a loser for being kept as a POW.
And I did not like that. No, I did not like that. I knew John McCain personally, and like I say, I always had the utmost respect for him. Oh, some of his policies I didn't agree with, but I wouldn't have said that.
OK, now seems like a good time to take stock of where we are. It's been a long night. If you've stayed with us, thank you very much. But for those of you just waking up, here is where we are with Anushka.
Yeah, if you are waking up, you're waking up to an election that is looking good for Donald Trump and not so much for Kamala Harris right now. Here is our battle board. You can see how it has been filling up overnight. Actually, only one of our 7 swing states in the middle called so far, officially, North Carolina, a big one, 16 electoral college votes, but also the only one that Trump won last time round in 2020. So arguably, Harris doesn't need it to win. But if we look at it on our map, and we look at all our swing states, then I can show you what's going on. So we've got North Carolina over here, which has been called for Trump. But right next door in Georgia, counting is still going on, but we began the night with data that suggested the underlying trends were shifting Trump's way, and it certainly feels like that at the moment. And it is not just these East Coast Sunbelt states, but over here in the Western ones too, with the Latino vote looking like it has shifted to Trump, and a third of the population in Arizona, for example, is Latino. So all night, as we've been going, we've started saying that the Rust Belt is key, but counting so far has Trump just ahead in these states as well. It is still very, very close in Pennsylvania. And of course, he isn't actually over the line down here. He hasn't reached 270, but the bookies are more than convinced. Betfair now gives him a 98% chance of victory. And guess who else is very, very confident right now? Elon Musk, the owner of X, who has actually been with Trump during the night. There you can see him. He has written on X, the future is going to be fire. And as if that isn't bad enough for Democrats, AP are saying the Republicans have taken control of the Senate too, as Jessica has been talking about, which will be a big help to Trump if he wins. So if that is the result, of course it's not really there yet, but if it comes that way, what actually happened? All night we've been drilling into a survey of over 115,000 Americans, AP Votecast. And let me show you 3 trends that I think help explain what might have happened. Number 1, it looks like the black vote has been quite key. This is national survey data. This is 2020. Biden was massively ahead with this group of voters. This was a really big driver of his victory. Kamala Harris looks like she's also very ahead, but not quite as much. And that difference in that lead is going to be really important. It will be affecting the margins in swing seats, especially Georgia, where a third of voters are black. And in fact, just now, it sounds like Georgia has just been called for Trump as well. This will be a huge part of what's been going on there. Also a big shift, as I mentioned, in Latino men too, particularly men apparently that have been driving this. And I just want to show you another thing that is sort of astonishing. 18 to 29-year-olds, they've gone down for Democrats, according to the survey data, from 61% to 52% now. Many will have gone independent, but it also looks like Trump has gone up as well. So these are areas where Harris may have lost out, but there's also an area where she did not gain enough. Many expected abortion to be a huge motivating issue that might push women towards Harris. Overall, there's been a slight shift towards her, but this group, white women in particular, the biggest voting bloc in the US, no real change in her favour. This is a group that didn't back Hillary Clinton in 2016. Many thought something historic might happen tonight. It doesn't look likely. And if we just go back to our battle board, I think you will be able to see there that Georgia has been called in the middle. And that now takes Trump to 246. He is not over the line to 270, but he is in touching distance, and it would be an uphill battle now. Very hard for Kamala Harris to find a route there.
It's Milwaukee, Madison, and
OK, Anushka, thank you very much indeed. Well, we understand that Donald Trump is on his way to his party and down there in Florida. Clearly, he thinks he's won, we assume. Doubtless, he will claim victory, whatever happens. He may not be quite there yet, but he seems to be trending in that direction, and he is certainly going down to address them. We don't believe that Kamala Harris does have plans to speak to anyone publicly tonight. Read into that what you will, or possibly she doesn't think the result is clear enough yet. I'll tell you what I wanted to ask all of you. I've been sort of pondering what happened last time Trump won. And I feel like no one really expected Trump to win. He'd done all these things that have broken every norm that would have disqualified any other candidate in any previous election cycle. We've discussed this many times. And he said all these things, you know, veterans were losers, mocked disabled people. He did all this stuff. He then won the White House, and almost immediately we got into this world of him against the media, really. There was the argument about the inauguration crowd sizes, and, you know, he said they were huge, and the media says, well, no, they weren't as big as Obama's. You know, all this stuff that you know about. And I felt like the system, if you can want to put it like that, the media, to some extent, elements of the government, resisted him at all costs. How does everyone respond now he's won again? I mean, that's like a really different step change. How does everyone respond to his habit of breaking norms at every turn?
I think
Do we just accept it?
I think I would just say, well, people don't necessarily like him and agree with the way he conducts himself, agree with the way his style, how he describes things. They like his policies. And so I think that's what's driving this. Once again, look, I covered the 2016 campaign back when I was a reporter, and I saw the energy on the ground. I actually thought that he had a chance of winning back then, and then I went on to serve for 2.5 years in the administration. So that's kind of where I am on this.
Look, I mean, full caveats aside, like, I know that what I heard from the Harris campaign just while we were in the last little break, that they're still holding out hope that they can pull down both the mail-in vote in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Okay.
So that is where the campaign is. I don't think you're going to see Harris tonight because they think that there is still an opportunity to turn the vote around there. I think, look, the backlash to Trump's policies were real because people across America were deeply troubled by his policies and his actions, and that Democrats rode that to a huge win in the midterms in 2018. Looking ahead to where we may end up if Trump is, in fact, the next president, I think you can expect a backlash to his policies. That is pretty common in American politics. The incumbent president does lose votes in the next Congress. Now, Democrats may still even win the House. We'll see how that shakes out over the next couple of months. I think the key thing for viewers in the UK to understand is that generally there is a sense in America that we will try to hold to our democratic norms and values. And if Trump takes a huge bunch of actions that break those rules and break those norms, I expect that you will see a robust public debate and protest against policies that we disagree with, just like there were huge protests from Republicans when they disagreed with Biden's policies. That's part of American politics.
Adam, I think one of the things we're not saying here is that, by and large, there's a double standard when it comes to the media. And we've seen that throughout this campaign, where the media has propped up Harris, where they've over-exaggerated things regarding Trump. And I think a lot of Americans are frankly tired of it. And that's why there's become more of a distrust against American media here in the U.S.
I don't know. I don't want to...
And just having served as somebody in a prior administration where we had good policies. We had Remain in Mexico, for example, where we paid the government of Mexico to help house people there. The people...
Okay.
Hold on. If I can just...
Sorry, I wasn't interrupting you. I was just... No, carry on.
That's so bad of me. No, you're the host.
No.
I was just going to say.
All I was trying to say is I was just trying to explain that we're watching the watch party. Trump's about to turn up. People are getting excited.
I was
going to encourage you to keep talking while we were watching it. Sorry.
I was going to say, Remain in Mexico worked for everybody. It worked for the United States. It worked for Mexico. It worked for the migrants. They were safe. They weren't, drowning in the Rio Grande back then. That's an example of a policy that worked. We had sanctions on Russia. That worked. We dealt with
Trump didn't want to put the sanctions on place, though.
We all did it. Doesn't matter. Sometimes he will say certain things, but the policy, and that's what I'm trying to say today. If Trump is elected again, look at the policy. Don't always look at the rhetoric. And people would be much better off if they didn't get all in a tizzy about whatever words and language he uses to describe something.
I mean, Heather and Adam have been wonderfully civil today, even though you represent, as you always are. But you know, there is
we like civility.
We love civility.
You know that, right?
But I do wonder about the next 76 days and what civility there will be. Remember that there is an old tradition in the United States that when one president leaves the Oval Office, he leaves a handwritten note on the Resolute desk in the Oval Office to give guidance to his successor. Can you imagine what Joe Biden is going to write to Donald Trump? That tells you kind of what a gulf there is between the outgoing and an incoming administration, assuming Donald Trump.
I mean, I don't think Trump didn't leave one.
No, he didn't.
Right.
But I mean,
So,
we used to have that tradition sometimes back in the UK, and then, of course, the incoming Tory government of whatever year it was decided to publish the letter saying there's no money left, and that was the end of that tradition. Jessica, sorry.
Here's why there is still why we still can't confidently say, and we certainly see the trends and things too, but most of the vote that is still outstanding in those blue wall states are in the very urban areas. Milwaukee County, there's still about 40% of the vote left. According to the AP, there's still a decent amount in Madison as well, Dane County there. And then when I'm looking here at Detroit, overwhelmingly Wayne County, Macomb there, which is also another swing county, there's still a good bit out, though Trump is ahead there once again. So, I mean, we still, when I'm looking here at Pennsylvania, it's Philadelphia, some in Pittsburgh. So because we don't fully know what that, perhaps I'm not sure if those are absentee or election day votes, but I think that is why we aren't seeing definitive calls on this. Certainly the trend line, and especially when we look at Trump doing better in other more rural counties and Harris not yet hitting the margins where Biden is in those urban areas, that does not bode well for her, but that is where the vote is still outstanding.
And that's what the campaign is saying.
Yeah, okay. What a twist that would be if we suddenly turned around and it was President Harris after all. Emma Murphy is with the Harris team.
Okay. Well, Tom, in the last few minutes, we've been told that the Vice President won't be addressing the crowd that has been waiting here for hours. The chair of the campaign came out and said there were still votes to count and they still believed in the promise of America. I have to say, his voice didn't sound like he had much belief left. Also, in the last few minutes, I've spoken to Nancy Pelosi, the former leader of the House, the woman that was so instrumental in getting Harris to stand and getting Biden to step down. She said she still believed there was a chance, but again, her eyes gave away a sense of really bitter disappointment. We've spoken to people as they started to leave tonight, and there is just a sense of disbelief. There was such a joyous, joyful mood here through the past hours. And then probably an hour and a half ago, it changed completely and people started to look incredibly fearful. They are now looking at the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency. These are people who have for months now knocked on doors, made phone calls, written letters to get the vote out for Kamala Harris, believing that she had a chance to become president. They seem to be losing that belief tonight, and it looks like her path to victory is almost impossible. It is certainly incredibly narrow, and there are many very, very devastated people here, not least her campaign team and those people who believed in a new future for America.
OK, Emma, thank you very much. People clearly leaving the Harris Watch Party there, which I think we can take, as Emma was saying, to be a not particularly good sign, although many people left Trump's rallies early in the last month or two, and it turned out not to be a bad sign at all. So there you go. Perhaps one shouldn't read too much into rallies one way or another. Now, Dan is at the Trump party, where I imagine things are going a lot better, not least because the man who may be about to be president is possibly about to arrive, Dan.
Yeah, we just had another ear-splitting rendition of YMCA, and we understand Donald Trump is on his way. Looks like they are preparing the stage behind me. We're not quite sure what he will say, but you can guess it'll be pretty bombastic, I would imagine. you know, it must be stressed that there are still votes being counted in key swing states, but things looking very favourable for him as things stand at the moment. And if he does pull this off, he would be the first president, I think, since Grover Cleveland in the late 19th century to win non-consecutive terms. It would be the political comeback for the ages. There's obviously huge other kind of repercussions to talk about, not least for international security, particularly with Ukraine. Also have a thought about all those court cases that we've covered exhaustively throughout the course of this year and beyond. I would imagine most of those will now fall away because he will be able to appoint whoever he likes in the Department of Justice and basically mean that those cases now get stopped in their tracks. But as you can see behind me, the stage is being prepared. There's probably, I don't know, there must be several thousand people here now. They're all packing in, and as we mentioned earlier, they've been coming in from Mar-a-Lago itself, where he has been watching this unfold. They've been flying in. We understand the Speaker, House Speaker, Mike Johnson, has been flying down as well. We now have confirmation that they have retaken control of the Senate as well as the House, and you know, we're now waiting for that final word on the race for the presidency. But as it stands at the moment, they are very, very confident indeed.
OK, Dan, thank you very much for now. We'll come back as soon as we see Donald Trump. Would anyone care to explain how YMCA became the...
Doesn't make any sense.
Because it's a fun song.
Well, it is a great song, but
it's just a fun song. Sometimes it's as easy as that.
If you asked me what political events I saw coming, I wouldn't necessarily pick that. Look, it looks more and more like it's going to be President Trump. Let's just try and crack through some stuff and try and give people a shape of what that might mean. We sort of didn't quite finish the court cases thing. Most of the charges highly likely to be dismissed. Obviously, the case in New York can't be dismissed. The state charges in Georgia can't be dismissed either, and he can't pardon themselves those. I feel like those will probably be put on hold, if not dropped. The New York charge effectively put on hold. Did we conclude that? Probably.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
Let's just deal with the big ticket items. Anyone got a clear view about Ukraine?
I mean, I think
what happens?
Donald Trump has said that Putin can do whatever he wants in Ukraine.
What does that mean in reality?
He hasn't said that.
No, he did not.
That's not fair
What he did
representation.
say is if other members, allies, don't end up paying, Putin can do whatever he wants. Not much better, but it is different. It is different than what you said.
What he did say was that he'd solve it in 48 hours.
Yeah. Which is a joke.
No, look. Here's what I think is going to happen. I worked for Trump, and I've been to Ukraine, and I spent a lot of time on these issues. Okay, yeah. I think we will continue to support Ukraine, however, at lower levels. I think the United States will come in and ask allies to do more, to step up, to provide the weaponry that Ukraine uses. The United States is going to look at this and say, Ukraine, what's the plan? Do both sides want to keep killing one another? Now, I'm personally a staunch supporter for Ukraine's territorial integrity and think that they should not give any ground to Russia. However, Trump will try to say, hey, guys, do you want to continue with this bloody battle that is killing the next generation of Ukrainian men and women? And we'll try to suggest that they have some sort of negotiated agreement. Also, there's a lot of Russian money that's sitting at, I believe it's Eurobank, and I think the world is going to come together and start to use that money to help pay for the rebuilding of Ukraine. I don't think that this is going to be as disastrous as you think it is.
This is a victory for Vladimir Putin?
Yes.
I'm sorry? Why would this...
Well, do you regard this because he's much more likely to pull back on weapons supplies and the funding of the Ukrainian military?
I said
lesser amounts.
No, I said what Trump, I think, would do is put more pressure on our allies to provide that weaponry and funding so that less is coming from the United States and more is coming from our allies. Now, our allies have done a great job of stepping up. Poland, for example, is at 4.4% of GDP going to defense spending. Countries have done a great job, but countries can do more. Others can do more.
Okay.
And I don't think that's a loss. That's not a win.
No, and to be fair to you,
Putin, if everybody's stepping in and pulling their fair share.
It supports the sort of French position, the Macron position of having sort of, sovereign autonomy for Europe. It's a kind of a win for Europe, arguably.
I just want to crack through these bits. I think people at home really want to know the answer to these questions. Israel, Gaza. Big change in policy, not change in
So I
policy,
think
puts pressure on Netanyahu, encourages Netanyahu.
I think we will put pressure on Netanyahu. Security cooperation will increase with the Israeli government. We will do more with the Abraham Accords and look to expand that throughout the Middle East. Look, when we talk to our Arab partners and allies, they are very, very worried about what an unleashed Iran does. And we look at what Iran is doing, and we have terror attacks around the world. We have cargo stoppages in the Red Sea and so forth. And so I think Trump is going to starve Iran of the money that it uses currently to fund terror all around the world. And we're going to stop them from doing that.
OK, I've got two more big questions. Yeah. John Irvine was saying earlier, he in his assessment, you know, you may have a different one, Israel cannot take out Iran's doesn't have the kit to take out Iran's potential nuclear sites. If Iran is confirmed by the CIA to have deployable nuclear weapons, in your view, does Trump destroy that?
I think if Trump were to win re-election, Trump and Israel will work carefully and closely together to do what they need to do to prevent a nuclear arms race in the Middle East and stop Iran from potentially using it.
OK, my final question, and I'll stop
interrogating. How about that for a diplomatic answer?
And I'll stop interrogating you. China makes a move on Taiwan at some point in the next 4 years. What does Trump do?
And that's something that President Xi has said. He wants his military ready to go in by 2027. Our Secretary of the Air Force in the United States just said that the other day. And Xi has called for a destruction of America if America goes in to help. Look, I think we will be there to help Taiwan. Trump has recently said Taiwan should step up and pay more, as he so ineloquently will say. But nevertheless, that's his position. But one of the things we talked about very at the onset tonight was our security agreement with the United States and Australia and the importance of bolstering the AUKUS agreements and other agreements around the world, because everybody recognizes the threat that China poses, not just to Taiwan, Japan, and elsewhere, but also to the United States and all of our allies.
And then the risk is that Trump's style and brash breaks up all the alliances that we've rebuilt over the last few years, right? There's a reason why today, Japan and Korea and the United States are much closer allies, why Japan and Korea themselves have repaired their relationship. That is the result of the diplomacy from the Biden administration. And I think there's serious questions to be asked about whether Donald Trump would continue that. That is a real question.
We are working just as well together today as we did under the Trump administration. The Trump administration just gave our allies more heartburn.
OK, we're going to go back to Dan at the Trump party.
40%. Yeah, well, one of my colleagues here on Good Morning Britain, Richard Gaisford, has just managed to grab a quick word with Donald Trump Jr., who said they're not counting their chickens yet because they can't trust the Democrats, essentially. So no real sign of unity or much in the way of kind of offering the hand across the political chasm in America at the moment, and a sign perhaps that they know that this is looking hopeful for them, but it is not over yet. The votes are still being counted in the critical swing states, despite all of the momentum being with Donald Trump. They know that this has still got a few more hours, possibly, maybe days, before the definitive result is in. But having said that, we think that Donald Trump is about to appear on the stage behind me. We don't know what kind of speech he is going to make, whether he's going to outright declare victory or whether he will just want to come and thank his supporters who've been here for many hours and thank those who fought in his campaign. But you can see now that this room, it really is packed with thousands of people who are waiting to see Donald Trump, who's been in Mar-a-Lago down the road for this quite remarkable evening, watching these results coming in, cheering as each of the projections are made on the screen behind me, and waiting for him to appear in person.
OK, Dan, thank you very much indeed. Well, we're moving to the end of our programme here, about to hand over to our colleagues on GMB who will pick up with Trump on stage when he finally appears. Maybe a last thought from all of you briefly. Jessica, it's not over yet, but it's not looking great for Harris, let's face it.
Yeah, the New York Times now says Trump has a 93% chance of victory, likely Trump, and that he's on track to win the popular vote by 1.2 points. And again, we still don't have results in from Nevada, but I mean, this looks like if these states go the same way, which again, we still don't have some of the very urban areas. And that's why I do think we continue to urge caution until we see those votes. But it's looking very, very good for Trump at this point, better than when you look back at where he was in 2020. It is a stunning reversal, certainly.
I think back to something that the Trump team said to me at the Republican National Convention, and that is, it's not over until January. The election is just one day. We've got to look ahead to January. Anything could happen between now and then.
Yeah, and like the Democrats, I think they're still holding out hope that we can find a way to really find a way to get the votes out in those key counties and find a way to turn the narrative on its head right now. And there are a lot of Democrats I know are feeling a little bit nervous going to sleep. Like we felt nervous going to sleep 4 years ago. Like there's still time to count the votes, and that's where Democrats are going to be. And also we'll watch whether Democrats win the House. And that could, if it is end up where Trump is the president, but Democrats have the House, that's a check on Trump's first term.
Brief final word from you, Robert.
I think this election ultimately has been about this sort of deep, gnawing economic anxiety and distress that so many Americans are feeling. And as I said at the very beginning of this program, you know, for me, it's not just about the politics of this, it's also about the kind of global landscape. I mean, the 47th president has got an extraordinary array of formidable challenges to face. The fact that it's Donald Trump coming to do this gives it an element of unpredictability that I think will worry much of the rest of the world.
OK, well, that is more or less us out of time. About to hand over to our friends and colleagues, Susanna and Ed, who I can see just over there. And we will redress the set, and they will very shortly be sitting right here. It has been an extraordinary night. It always is here. It began with uncertainty. Nothing for sure yet, but it does look as if we are drifting slowly towards another Donald Trump presidency. Thank you so much for spending the night with us. But that's it. Goodbye.
Good morning, Britain, live from Washington, D.C. Is this the king of all comebacks as Donald Trump takes the lead in the battle to become the next president of the United States? He's projected to win the key battleground states of North Carolina and Georgia in a major blow to his rival.
Kamala Harris hasn't admitted defeat just yet, but in the last few minutes, Democratic Party officials have sent supporters home from their overnight party after telling them that Harris will not be giving a speech tonight.
We will bring you the full story live from our team across the United States. And we have special guests this morning, Stormy Daniels, Sarah Palin, and Donald Trump's nephew, Fred Trump III, to get all of their reactions.
Stay with us for the next 3 hours as we bring you all the action from this historic night
Wednesday,
in American
6th
politics.
of November, 2024, live from Washington. This is Good Morning Britain. America Decides with Susanna Reid and Ed Balls.
Well, a very good morning from Washington, D.C. If you're a Donald Trump supporter, not such a good morning if you're a Kamala Harris supporter, because the former president is projected to win the key battleground states of Georgia and North Carolina and appears to be edging closer to regaining his place in the White House. Donald Trump is due to make a speech to supporters in Florida shortly.
But the Democrats say that they are not giving up, with millions of votes still to be counted in other key swing states, in particular Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, those northern Rust Belt seats which will make all the difference. Could we still see Kamala Harris enter the White House? In the last few moments, their supporters have been telling us all that Kamala Harris will not be speaking tonight, and James Goodison has got the latest on this historic night in America.
From the Arizona desert to the rain of Michigan, millions of votes are being counted to find out who will be the next president. And after a night of predictions and projections, Donald Trump appears to be in the ascendancy, winning the first swing state of North Carolina and almost certainly clinching Georgia.
We feel pretty confident that he will win this state. Not enough out. What we're going through right now is a reconciliation process.
Over 30 states have now been called, both candidates winning where they'd expect to. But the data coming in overnight showing key gains for Donald Trump with black and Latino voters as well as young men.
Trump is actually winning by 10 points, 18 to 29-year-old men. And while Biden carried 18 to 29-year-olds 61 to 36, Harris is only winning those 52 to 44.
For Kamala Harris, there is a lifeline. 3 states in the north of the USA.
The race is coming down to Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan, it looks like. And this is exactly what we have known for some time was likely to be the case. And Donald Trump knew that, Kamala Harris knew that, and this is going to be a long night here.
In those 3 states, known as the Rust Belt, there is plenty more road to run. Both sides see winning Pennsylvania as key. Over $100 million has been thrown by both campaigns at the state alone. Earlier in the night, Donald Trump took to social media to make claims about interference, quickly rubbished by Philadelphia officials.
That's not nothing new. I mean, this playbook has been played since 2020. You saw it, and we're going to do our job to give the citizens and give America the election that they deserve.
In California and Florida, supporters packed campaign HQs to watch the results trickle in, the mood changing almost by the minute. In California, glum faces at the Kamala Harris watch party. The VP was supposed to do a speech. Instead, they got a tight-lipped staffer saying she won't be coming.
We still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken.
At Donald Trump's party in Florida, fans spent the night in a bullish mood.
I don't know if we'll find out tonight, but I'm confident that Trump will win.
Well, I'm not hoping for none. I know Trump gonna beat the living hell out of her.
It's too big to rig. They stole it in 2020, and they won't be able to do it again. That's it.
Whilst most states are declared, it could be days before we have a conclusive result. 3 of the swing states, including the all-important Pennsylvania, may take a long time to count. The US and much of the world will have to hold its breath for some time yet. James Goodison, Good Morning Britain.
Well, top advisors to Donald Trump have reportedly told supporters gathered at his watch party in Florida that they are confident the former president could also win the crucial swing states of Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and Michigan.
The New York Times claims there is now a 90% chance that Donald Trump will be returned to the White House. But the newspaper has been wrong before, and our chief correspondent Richard Gaisford is with the Trump campaign in West Palm Beach in Florida, waiting to hear from Donald Trump, which we're told is imminent. Richard, Donald Trump's supporters, though, are looking upbeat, optimistic. They think he's returning to the White House?
Oh, they most certainly do, Ed. Certainly a very buoyant mood here in the Palm Beach Convention Center. It has been building through the night. When we start seeing those patches of red on the map, now analysts would tell you that early on in an American election you would get more Republican seats because, in effect, those rural votes get counted that much more quickly. But what's happened is you've then had this red wave effectively across the country in areas where Kamala Harris was pretty confident she was going to make inroads. It has been a very difficult night, as you've seen, for the Democrats. I have just been speaking with Donald Trump's son, Donald Jr., and he has told me that they would much rather be us, in his words, than them right now. But they are not complacent, he says, because, in his words, he is worried about what the Democrats might do overnight, harking back, of course, 4 years to the previous election. Take a look behind me. You can see the stage, the flags there. I think Donald Trump is in the building, and he's ready to go on stage very quickly, and we will bring that to you, of course, just as soon as he does. But the mood in this room, which is now packed, absolutely packed with supporters and with friends and family who are now sitting around the stage, everyone waiting for him to come up and, in effect, make what is a victory speech before, of course, all the results have been called.
Richard, we will come back to you as soon as Donald Trump appears there on stage, because you can sense, look, this is the point, you know it's 270 to win. And you can see by the numbers on the screen, Trump's not there yet. And the Harris team will probably be saying there's still a route to victory, there's still numbers we can get. But what you do, and it reminds me so much of 2016, when it was Trump hoping to become president and Hillary Clinton up against him. And you just sense the mood from the parties, from the gatherings. Who's staying, who's sticking around, who wants to see their leader speak to them, and who's decided not to speak, and who's leaving. And you can just look, you know, they are just all expectant, waiting for Donald Trump to take to the stage and address them. He is currently in the lead and projected to win swing states, which are the states which swing the election. And meanwhile, Kamala Harris not expected to speak tonight. You know, the wind's going out of the sails on that side of the political equation.
So you could say he's in the home straight. He can see the finishing line just to get over the line, but maybe he might fall over in those final yards. But of course, that's not true. All the votes have been cast. Everything is in. It's just a case of counting. And the thing is, every indication, actually for a few hours now, is that even when Harris is winning, it's tighter than 2020. And amongst key groups, Donald Trump is pulling away. And let's be honest, it would be a miracle if Kamala Harris now could pull off those Rust Belt seats, which she now needs in order to become the president. All the votes are cast. They've not quite finished counting, but you've got to say it's looking like Donald Trump is going to win this. And our North American correspondent, Noel Phillips, is actually down at that Kamala Harris party. Is it really a party at Howard University?
Look at the contrast,
Noel, it kind of looks a little bit bleak behind you. She graduated there in 1986, but you know, I'm supposed to ask you, do they think they can still win, Noel? But they're not even there.
Well, Ed, it's a bit like the groom not showing up for her wedding. The stage was, in fact, set, and they've just put a plastic bag over the microphone where the Vice President was due to speak. We do understand, and I have been learning in the last few moments, that she was meant to make that 6-minute journey from her Vice President's residence to the Howard University, but for some reason, she decided not to do so. But the mood here throughout the last couple of hours was one of real tension and nervousness. A lot of her supporters were anxious. And within the Harris campaign, there is a high level of anxiety. Her campaign manager has been briefing her staff, telling them that she still sees a way to victory. It may not be through the traditional path, but there is still a potential path to victory for Kamala Harris. That's what the campaign is saying right now. But I just want to say, you know, I've been monitoring as people, you know, been leaving, just to say this entire space around us was filled with supporters, people dancing, jumping, hoping that they weren't going to relive the nightmare of 2016 when Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump. They've gone home to sleep now and are hoping that nightmare will not become a reality. I saw the actor Don Cheadle, who is one of her most prominent celebrity supporters, also leaving in a hurry. And I think there are people who are stunned. They don't know what to say. They don't have any reaction as to what's gone wrong, why, you know, the election is not going in the favor of the Vice President. I think the one thing that will be of most concern is Georgia flipping red. Joe Biden won during 2020. Now Donald Trump has won in Georgia. He's also taken North Carolina. So her only path as of right now to victory is winning Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and Michigan. But I think it's worth, before I throw back to you, Ed and Susanna, mentioning that a lot of people had written the Vice President off at the very start of her campaign. So the sheer fact that this race was so close and that we're in this moment goes to show that this is not a slam dunk election win for Donald Trump. But as I say, her team here still believe that there is a path to victory, and the mood, despite nobody being here, is one of hope.
OK. Noel, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's have a look in more detail at one of the crucial swing states. Lorna Shaddick is in Arizona. What's happening there, Lorna? How does this compare to 2020, 2016?
Well, Susanna, with just about half of the votes counted, just over half of the votes counted, it's still very tight here. Within sort of 1% or so, Donald Trump is ahead, but it is just by a whisker. So still very evenly divided, perhaps, in fact, about as evenly divided as this beautiful banana split dessert here in this diner here in Arizona. But I think it tells you all you need to know really about the atmosphere here in this state. We tried to find somewhere to watch the results with both Republicans and Democrats, and that just didn't prove possible. So instead, first of all, we went to a rural bar just outside the city of Phoenix here, where we came across lots of people in Trump T-shirts who were feeling very jubilant and very optimistic, although a lot of them talking about their concerns if Kamala Harris were to win the presidency, a concern that America would become much more left-wing and more communist, as they put it. One person even saying that they wouldn't believe the result if Kamala were to win. But then we came back here into the city centre in Phoenix and went to an LGBTQ plus bar, where the atmosphere, I must say, was a lot more subdued, and people there talking about their concerns if Donald Trump were to become president as relating to gay marriage and what he might do about that. So really, I think a lot of fear on both sides here in Arizona about the consequences of this presidential election. But one thing I think that everybody we've spoken to has had in common is that they just want this all to be over now. So we've come to this diner where there are no televisions, where people are getting a little bit more of a respite, I think, from all the politics.
All right, Lorna, thank you.
Thank you. I'm afraid, Lorna, that it's not going to be over. It's about to begin the next 4 years, where the new president is going to be underway very soon. We've said from the outset that Pennsylvania was vital, and we're now in a situation where Kamala Harris has to win in Pennsylvania if she's any chance of becoming president. We can go to Rachel Younger, who's the ITV news correspondent, who's for us in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump claimed there was massive cheating in the state in Philadelphia, although if he wins it, he's probably not going to be talking about cheating anymore.
Well, I think you've put your finger on it exactly. That's right. It was just before 1 a.m., which is when the polls closed your time, when Donald Trump took to social media to make allegations, make claims that there had been massive cheating in the city of Philadelphia. Now, the election board responded very quickly, very strongly there. One of its officials, a Republican, notably, saying there was no truth whatsoever in those accusations. Now, you may remember that 4 years ago, Donald Trump used the delay in getting the results in this most pivotal of states to try to sow doubt about the end result. This is a place where they don't begin counting their postal ballots until the day of the election itself, unlike most other places in America. And so there was this long delay, and in that time, he prematurely claimed that he'd won the state, which in the end, Joe Biden took. So I think when he began to make these comments this morning, there was a certain irony, really, because it may well be that he doesn't need those kind of tactics. Given what the state of the race looks like in this state, which is so critical, only if Kamala Harris can put in an absolutely stellar performance in the other big city of Philadelphia, where we're still waiting for a lot of those votes to be counted, will she be able to take it. It could well go Donald Trump's way, and if it does, the presidency is likely to go with it.
Rachel, thanks very much indeed. As you were just finishing your report, we had our cameras switched back on at Trump headquarters, where it is absolutely packed. We are expecting Donald Trump to come on stage in the next couple of minutes there. And, the mood is optimistic. It is a big contrast to the mood at the Harris campaign. In the last few hours, Donald Trump, seems to have got a big bucket of ice-cold water and poured it all over the Harris campaign. And ITV News presenter Julie Etchingham is in San Francisco. That's Kamala Harris's home state, California. I mean, Julie, the balloons are still inflated, but doesn't look like there's many people there.
Well, I'll just show you over my shoulder. We're at Manny's Political Cafe and Bar right in the heart of San Francisco. This is a place where Kamala Harris would come very often campaigning. They knew her here, of course, in San Francisco as a district attorney and in the state more widely as an attorney general. So this is really one of those beating hearts of the Kamala Harris campaign. You can probably just see there's a few people still here watching the screens. It's 10:15. here in San Francisco. We're just giving you a little nose in. They're all watching the screens, but as you can see, it is pretty subdued. So much optimism in the last couple of days. We spoke to a couple of Kamala Harris's closest friends and associates here in San Francisco just over the weekend, and they were planning to spend election night here, watching things happen in San Francisco, and at the last minute, the Kamala Harris team got them to fly out to DC. Such was their apparent confidence in the way things were looking, but obviously, as we can see tonight, as you've spotted from where you're sitting, Susanna, it is pretty subdued here. There was a massive party planned, and it is just, they're trying to keep the hopes up, but it is getting a little quieter throughout the night. I think there are a couple of straws in the wind that are worth noting. In the polling in the run-up to Election Day, it appeared that Kamala Harris was not doing as well with Latino voters in California as Joe Biden did in 2020. So one perhaps marker there that is now playing out in echoes across some of the results that we're seeing across America. And also, we spoke to a panel of students here. Most of them were first-time voters, and it was really interesting. And don't forget, we are in a true blue liberal state here, California, that will back Kamala Harris. The 54 Electoral College votes are already in her column. But these students, one of them was very enthusiastic about voting for her on the issue of reproductive rights and abortion. But the rest were really not over the line in terms of their full-throated enthusiasm for them. And the comment that came up again and again was the Democrats' position on Israel and Gaza, and that is something that I think also will be looked at very closely as the rest of the results come in. It was really interesting that with this panel of students were not there. When you think about the amount of time she spent in her campaign really focusing on getting out those young voters, those first-time voters, well, even here in California, you know, students from Berkeley and San Francisco State University, they may have voted for her, but it was with some reluctance, and they had a lot of things that they wanted to get off of their chest. So it's been quite an instructive night. They're holding on to any straws that they can manage here, but it is getting a bit quieter, it has to be said.
And Julie, it looks like Harris supporters are going to have to just put up with that cardboard cutout of their candidate, because we're not expecting her to speak tonight. But Trump supporters there at the headquarters in Florida very much hoping to see him in the next couple of minutes. Ed?
Next couple of minutes, we were anticipating Donald Trump addressing his campaign party about half an hour ago. It's been a pattern of this election campaign for Donald Trump to arrive rather late at his rallies. Sometimes people are waiting 20 minutes, half an hour, even more than that. So I'm afraid all our GMB viewers with us are waiting with Donald Trump. But on the other hand, these guys are not going to mind at all. They will wait and wait, because they're going to wait to hear, likely, the next President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Sounds like he's coming out.
Looks like it's about to happen.
They're cheering for someone.
I think they're just cheering.
Richard Gaisford is there. We don't have to wait for him. Richard, what are they happy about in this particular moment?
Yeah, well, if you can hear me, and I'm just about hearing you, they've just announced that they've projected a win in Pennsylvania, which has come much earlier than expected. And that is, as it says on the screens here, 19 Electoral College votes. And that is a major win for Donald Trump. He has fought so hard for Pennsylvania. It has been seen to be the key swing state, and has been doing an awful lot of campaigning in that particular state over the recent days and weeks. It's a similar story in North Carolina, a similar story in Georgia too, and this is why everybody in this room believes that Donald Trump will be the president. He has a wide path to victory now. Kamala Harris was be tiptoeing along a very narrow track if she was wanting still, or able still, to become president. And every time they announce another state's projection in favor of the Republicans, well, this crowd here goes wild. They are packed in to the Palm Beach Convention Center. It started fairly low-key, and as the evening's gone on and the results have come in, it has got louder, it's got more boisterous, and certainly there's an awful lot more people now flooding into the building here, expecting Donald Trump to effectively make a victory speech on the stage behind me. You can see those flags there with Nigel Farage coming through on our live feed here. He has been out for the last few days supporting Donald Trump at various rallies, and now one of the networks has just announced that Donald Trump has won the presidency. Now that is a projection. I'm not going to run entirely with that, but I'm just saying that is why the crowd are now going crazy. They are calling for him to come up on stage. We believe he is behind the curtains that you'll see there, behind those stars and striped flags that are lined up that will be the backdrop to this speech. It's been a long and tiring campaign for him. Just in the last few days, he's made multiple stops in all of the key swing states. He has been talking himself hoarse, but tonight I think he will certainly find his voice.
Richard, don't go anywhere, because this is obviously the party that we're all watching now. I think it's Fox News have projected now a Trump presidential win. We just saw Nigel Farage, his great friend, who was at one of the rallies yesterday, of course, and name-checked by the former, and we, you know, by all accounts, or many accounts, the next president of the United States. There's the MP for Clacton there, doing a bit of constituency work. I know he's definitely doing some broadcasting work.
He's not doing surgeries today.
No, but Donald Trump is about to come out and speak to supporters. If it is true that he has won Pennsylvania, that pretty much puts an end to Kamala Harris's prospects, doesn't it?
It does, because then she has to win kind of Sunbelt seats in the South, and those are the ones which at the moment have been more strongly going for Trump. It is so interesting, that phrase from James Carville back in the 1990s, "It's the economy, stupid." And the great kind of irony of this election is that at the moment the American economy is booming. It is growing so strongly, much more strongly than in Britain and across the rest of Europe. Interest rates have come down, but the economy is really taking off, and yet American voters have felt really down about the economy over the last few years. High inflation, a squeeze on their cost of living. Donald Trump said the whole time the economy was better when I was the president before the pandemic, and that Pennsylvania vote is absolutely vital. This is not one of the states in the South near to the American border where the immigration reality is there day by day, but it's a state in which working people have seen their living standards squeezed, and to be honest, they voted Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. That is a big turnaround.
He has to get 270 to win, and the key thing about Pennsylvania is it delivers a huge number of electoral college votes.
19
votes. It's not the biggest number.
No.
But it is a hugely significant number because it's one of the biggest of the swing states. We're all on tenterhooks, hoping that Donald Trump doesn't keep the supporters waiting very much longer. But it looks like they're just settling in for, as you say, quite a long wait. So in the meantime...
He'll make them wait. The thing is, this is a speech which he will only ever make once. The first speech when he is re-elected as President of the United States against the odds. And, you know, if you're him, you don't want to rush this. You want to get this right. And you've been waiting for that Pennsylvania result. You know, I would say, Donald Trump, take your time and deliver the speech you want to take. We don't mind waiting.
No. In fact, while we're waiting, just to remind you, you're going to be kept up to date with all the key results and analysis. We've got guests, of course, former Republican governor of Alaska, close ally of Trump, Sarah Palin. We've got Harris supporter Senator Pat Spearman. And we've got host of the news agents, John Sopel. So we're going to talk through all of them in just a moment. And after 8 o'clock this morning, Stormy Daniels, the woman at the centre of Donald Trump's historic criminal trial. She says she's sleeping in a camper van because she has fears about her own safety.
Goodness. First, though, here's Charlotte back in London, who can bring us up to date with the rest of the day's news. We'll be back to Donald Trump the moment he speaks.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're on tenterhooks here. We'll bring you any developments as they happen. But good morning to you, because there is news here in the UK today as well. The Queen is resting at home on doctor's advice after it was revealed she's unwell with a chest infection. She's been forced to withdraw from her royal engagements for the rest of the week. Nick Dixon's at Buckingham Palace with more for us. Good morning to you, Nick. So what more details have the palace given on this?
Morning to you, Charlotte. What we're hearing from the palace is essentially that the Queen has been told to slow down, take a short period of rest and a step back from royal engagement, at least for the next 48 hours, to give herself a chance to recover from this chest infection. So she's going to miss a couple of key engagements, one of them here at Buckingham Palace tomorrow night, a welcome reception for Olympic and Paralympic athletes from Paris 2024 from the Games. The King will take care of that one. He will host that on his own now, but also she will miss the annual opening of the Field of Remembrance at Westminster Abbey. The Duchess of Gloucester will step in for the Queen. We have a statement this morning from Buckingham Palace just giving us a very brief update on her health. It says, Her Majesty the Queen is currently unwell with a chest infection for which her doctors have advised a short period of rest. With great regret, Her Majesty has had to withdraw from her engagements for this week, but she very much hopes to be recovered in time to attend this weekend's remembrance events as normal. It has been quite a busy period for the Queen and the King as well. Of course, they travelled to Australia and to Samoa quite recently and took part in quite a lot of engagements there in a short period of time, but hopefully she will be fit and well soon. Prince William has been very busy over the last few days. He's in South Africa at the moment, focusing on his environmental issues there and his Earthshot Prize, working with local communities over the last 24 hours or so. But as I say, Charlotte, we're hoping for some good news and perhaps we will see the Queen fit and well at the weekend.
Let's hope so. We wish her well. Nick, thanks very much. Also this morning, police in riot gear were sent into a housing estate in Edinburgh after dozens of youths threw fireworks at motorists and set fire to wheelie bins. A shop and a petrol station were also targeted. Police closed roads and warned people to avoid the area where there was a control zone in force banning the use of fireworks. It is the third year in a row disorders broken out in the Nidri area of the city on bonfire night. Hundreds of people have taken part in protests in Tel Aviv after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sacked his Defence Minister Yoav Gallant. He said there was a crisis of trust between them over the invasions of Gaza and Lebanon. It follows reports of shouting matches between the two men over Israel's war strategy. Women who have had intimate photos or videos published online without their consent will be among those giving evidence at an inquiry in Westminster today. MPs will also hear from Google and Microsoft. Campaigners say current laws do not go far enough to protect women from so-called revenge porn. The family of a 2-year-old girl who vanished from a British Army base in Germany back in 1981 have returned there to mark what would have been her 45th birthday. The disappearance of Catrice Lee is one of the longest unresolved cases in the history of the Royal Military Police. An exhibition of photos is being staged to try to jog people's memories in the hope of finally discovering what happened to her. And relations between Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck appear to have improved after the couple divorced earlier this year. J-Lo was at the London premiere of her new film Unstoppable, which is produced by Affleck. She told us it had been a pleasure working with everyone on set, including her ex-husband.
I would describe all of the cast and everybody behind the scenes as spectacular and wonderful, and it was just a pleasure, for the whole, behind the scenes producing and in front of the camera. It was amazing.
And that's it. You're up to date with everything here in the UK. Let's go back over to the US now and join Susanna and Ed in Washington, D.C. for the very latest.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. So 270 Electoral College votes needed to win the 2024 presidential election. And it looks increasingly likely that Donald Trump's going to reach that number. It all comes down to those 7 key battleground states. Fox News is calling a win for Donald Trump in the key swing state of Pennsylvania. And he's projected to win in both North Carolina and to flip the state of Georgia, which voted for Biden in 2020.
So let's take a look at how things are looking across the rest of the country. We can see a lot of states have been declared As expected in both Republican and Democratic strongholds, Kamala Harris's hopes of claiming the Rust Belt states, which is up in the north, Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin, they now appear to be fading. And joining us now to help us interpret the numbers and discuss what the outcome means not only here in the US, but for us in the UK, we have Democratic Nevada State Senator Pat Spearman, who's been a big Kamala Harris supporter. Nevada is one of the 7 key battleground states. Former Republican governor of Alaska, close ally to Donald Trump, former vice presidential candidate herself, Sarah Palin, and, of course, journalist John Sopel, who is BBC's North American editor. Through the Trump presidency, he's seen Trump win and Trump lose in American elections. He now hosts a daily newscast called the News Agents. John, you've been here before.
We've been here before, and there is so much of it that feels like 2016 all over again, even down to Kamala Harris due to appear at her watch party tonight and not going, exactly as Hillary Clinton did in 2016 at the Javits Center in New York, and all her supporters going home disappointed. Look, we've still got a way to go, but de facto, Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States of America in one of the most astonishing comebacks that we have ever seen in political history, given where he was after 2 impeachments, the insurrection at the Capitol, 34 criminal convictions, and the American people have said, we want you back in the White House. Unbelievable.
Sarah Palin, how has he done it?
It's kind of the beauty of, or at least the nature of, the style of governance here in the U.S., where that pendulum swings. We go 4 years, especially in the recent history, with one party, and then people think, well, the grass has got to be greener over on the other side, and you didn't govern as you had campaigned, people, so we're going to go over here next.
And but this is just a natural swing? Well, surely, I would have thought you'd say something more sort of positive about the magnetism of Donald Trump, the character.
Well,
because he has defied, I mean, as John Sopel just pointed out, he's a convicted criminal.
So what I explained was the nature of our governance, and tradition shows that it plays out that way. But as for Donald Trump, people did not necessarily vote for as a person who has some of these idiosyncrasies that you suggest, but they voted for what he represents, what is on that Trump train, and that is a promise to not fundamentally transform America, as had been promised would be done to America. That happened back in 2008 when Barack Obama promised that they were just days away before the election in 2008. America would be fundamentally transformed. People this go around were saying, we don't want a transformation, we want a restoration of all this good and free and right about America. And that is what the Trump, the MAGA movement, that is really a perpetuation of the Tea Party movement back 15, 16 years ago, that's what this is about.
So you mean a sort of traditional values, socially conservative America?
More of a freedom-loving, America first, no war, quit wasting money, government. Government, get off our back, get back on our side. It's kind of a rage against the machine.
Pat Spearman, you are a state senator down in Nevada, a big Harris supporter. I wonder, is this about a restoration of values, a return to more traditional view of America, or is it just something much more simple, which is that it's all about the economy? And if you go back 6 months ago in the polls, when Joe Biden was president and hadn't stood down, the economy was the big issue. Trump was ahead. Kamala Harris has valiantly tried to turn things around. But in the end, if you look in Pennsylvania, top issue, the economy, people feeling worse off. Inflation hit them hard. The economy has lost it for the Biden-Harris presidency.
With all due respect, and I appreciate Governor Palin's comments, but with all due respect, and I'm going to bring my perspective.
Of course.
I've never been white in my life, and I've never been a white man in my life. I've lived my entire life as a black person, an African American. And so when I look at tonight, this is why my heart breaks. Because you talk about, is it a restoration of what? When Barack Obama took office in 2008, the things that he promised, yes, they did come true. Because what he was talking about was going into the ideal of a perfected union, which we have not become. And so for people who have been born in privilege, they do not understand the struggles of those who are still trying to be accepted as equal. When I look at what happened tonight, it is very clear to me that the mirror that we have held up to our face as Americans is not what the Founding Fathers really envisioned. It is not what we, the people, envisioned. It is not.
The black voters, especially younger black voters and Hispanic voters, have shifted in this election compared to 2020 to Donald Trump.
Yeah,
they weren't voting about race.
Yeah,
they were voting about their pocketbook and their insecurity.
Well, and can I address that, please? Because there's been this myth that the Biden economy was bad. But if you go back to 2019, 2017, Barack Obama handed over an economy that was growing. 17 and 18. Then we had COVID to come in. COVID came in, and you had a president who refused scientific evidence, and people in America were dying. People in my district were dying. There were families who were burying 2 and 3 people. Hold on, can I just finish? There were families who were burying 2 or 3 people a week. Okay? And so when people talk about, the economy went into a slump with COVID. And when Biden-Harris administration took over, they were trying to dig themselves out.
The fact is that what Donald Trump has achieved, apparently tonight, and becoming the 47th president of the United States, is that he has built a coalition, as you say, where he has brought in a lot of young Latino men. He's gone for the bro vote. He's gone for macho man. And it has worked. We're going to see, I'm sure, at the end of this, that a lot more women have voted for Kamala Harris, but an awful lot more men have voted for Donald Trump. And 6 months ago, I was in Steve Bannon's place in Washington, D.C., the mastermind of Trumpism, and he was saying, OK, we're going to lose the women's vote over the change in abortion laws, but we are going to go after macho man. And sure enough, they have done that. You can talk about Trump's ill discipline, you can talk about the idiosyncrasies, but actually there was a strategy there which looks like it has delivered tonight for Donald Trump.
And that was Hispanic and younger black men too.
Yeah, exactly. Hispanic and younger black men too. And the numbers that I'm seeing, out of places of Michigan and, other places.
Yeah, can I just comment on that? Because, and I spoke to some black men. I have some in my family, believe it or not. And one of the things that was misconstrued is the stimulus check. That was not Donald Trump. No. But he put his name on it, and people thought that. And so what we have seen tonight, and this is the thing that disturbs me the most as a policymaker, because President Obama showed up to a press conference in a tan suit, and people lost their wigs. They lost their minds. Their heads exploded. He showed up in a tan suit.
Why? Why did people get upset about that?
I don't know. I don't know, because, previously people were always in dark suits, and he shows up in a tan suit. Well, what's wrong with that? But, and the same people who talk about values and who talk about principles and who talk about what it is that God wants us to do, these are the same people who have no problem to keep things the way they are, to make sure that people like me, to make people who have been oppressed all of our lives, to make sure that we, quote, stay in the place. I'm not finished, just a minute. To make sure that we stay in the place where they have provided for us. And so I look at the race tonight, and let me say this. Until it is 270, if it's 270, I will be deeply saddened. As a veteran, I will be deeply saddened, and I will be at the point of festivity because someone stood over the graves of those who gave their lives for this country and called us suckers and losers. And all he did was get a pimple on his ankle and did not go to service.
I think you are going to be saddened, though, because it absolutely looks like Donald Trump is going to win.
I will be sad.
Sarah, is this about immigration? Is it about culture? Is it about abortion? Or is it just down to the economy and living standards, and people don't feel they've got better off in the last couple of years?
I think people feel, and I'll address the suggested question anyway about, what does restoration of America mean? It means getting back to our charters of liberty, to that perfect blueprint that will allow a more perfect union that is to be based on equality and equal opportunity.
But Sarah, what are Americans not free to do that Donald Trump's going to give them the freedom to do?
Let's talk about the Bill of Rights. where there has been an erosion of the Second Amendment, our right,
the right to bear arms.
Protect ourselves.
I don't think there's been an erosion.
There has been.
You've got Kamala
Harris's statement, remember, where she said she wanted a government buyback, which is a confiscation of firearms, because you can't buy back something you never had to start with. So that in itself. And
she also said that she's a gun owner, and if anyone broke into her house, she'd shoot them.
Interject this, because I hear this a lot. I hear this a lot when people saying there's been an erosion of the Second Amendment. There's not been an erosion of the Second Amendment because we want common sense gun laws. That doesn't mean we have common sense laws about pool safety. That doesn't mean that people are coming to take your pool. It simply means that we want to make sure that kids are not hiding under desks. We want to make sure that this generation has grown up, and what they do is they prepare for the inevitability, God bless us, but the inevitability that there may be a shooter. And so there's not been an erosion. You want to talk about the erosion of rights? How about women who get pregnant, who need an abortion to save their lives, and because men have decided they do not need it or they shouldn't have it, they have done. And you want to talk about the erosion of rights?
I think it's men and women. Because I think Sarah is probably going to agree with the person on that. It's men and women.
Yeah, can I just finish this? So here's the thing. The erosion of rights. Okay, so I happen to be a same-gender loving woman, okay? In Donald Trump's America, and when people talk about going backwards, they're talking about criminalizing the people like me who love someone who love differently. You want to talk about an erosion of rights? Now, if the government, if they really want us to be free, get out of our bedroom, because that's nasty.
Sarah,
what has he done that would even make you think that there would be some criminality attached to...
Isn't there likely to be a federal push now, a federal push on restricting abortion? Not necessarily a federal law, but there's lots of things the federal government can do to push back now on abortion. For example, the movement of abortion medicines across state borders.
I think a lot of people have tried to create this narrative and package it and sell it, the abortion issue, as...
But you want that.
...as an issue to divide the populace. It's not an administrative White House position. It's not part of the presidential campaign. Why is it? We're not talking